Hello. So, this particular lecture is going to focus on Title IX in particular with regard to Minnesota. This is actually a portion of which I actually created for another purpose, but as I was preparing the lecture for this particular class, I realized that a lot of the information that I was including was part of or would have been included in this particular information that I previously prepared. So there have been some changes as to some of the information that I'm providing here than what I've provided in the past to update some information, but also I thought that having the various statistics and other information that are included within this discussion would be helpful for you all. I know that at least a couple of you mentioned that you were interested in using the topic of Title IX for your final paper, so I thought this might be helpful information. I will let you all read the information contained on this slide, but I do want to also give just a quick caveat and an asterisk here. You notice there are quotes here from President Obama as well as Vice President Joe Biden. And I want to just make it clear that although Vice President Joe Biden's comments mostly reference women who have experienced sexual violence or sexual harassment, things that fall under Title IX. This particular body of law covers and applies to all individuals, no matter what they may identify as with regard to their gender.
have some additional statistics, but while we are talking about some of this information that's related to the statistics, I do want to kind of put an asterisk at the statistics portion and talk a little bit about data and statistics related specifically to issues involving the culture of silence that exists with regard to sexual assault. So, what you're seeing on the screen now is a clipping from an article that was in the Star Tribune. And this article talked about the fact that reported sexual assaults were up 23% in Minnesota colleges. And so, while that is the case, there's quite a bit in terms of rationale that can be talked about in terms of why that may have been. Partially because some of the statistics tell us that in general, the issue of sexual assault is not very frequently reported, either law enforcement for general individuals or college officials for college students who experience this. And so there has been quite a bit of attention being paid to sexual violence and sexual harassment in higher education in recent years. And that may also have played into the fact that more have been reported. It does not necessarily mean that there have been more sexual assaults occurring in colleges in Minnesota, but simply that there are more that have been reported. So it is important to understand this as we go forward and continue talking about some of the statistics that we'll hit on, as well as some of the other information. As I mentioned, there is what is perceived for many in this industry and familiar with this area, a culture of silence with regard to victims reporting the experience they have had if it involves sexual assault. You see a clipping on the left that is a clipping from a Star Tribune article, the article that preceded this slide. And this is a clipping that shares some statistics about women who are, college women specifically, who are victims of sexual assault. You'll also note that the second stat there says that 12% of female victims report the crime to police. Now, that is expected to be the number for individuals overall who report to police, which, as you can see, that leaves a considerable amount of incidents and assault matters that are not being reported to police in general. If you look over to the right, you will also see information sharing that um, by some sources, the percentages of students who are victims, college students who are victims of sexual assault or sexual violence, is possibly as low as 5% who actually reported to college officials. And so, again, there's this overarching concern about the culture of silence where people don't talk about the issue, where people don't bring that issue up to others in a very regular basis, and therefore it's not being addressed as it should be. All right, so I mentioned earlier that I wanted to chat about a few recent Minnesota headlines that deal with sexual violence matters or sexual harassment in our higher education system. You see clippings from a couple of different headlines here on the screen. The one on the left is information about University of Minnesota, and within that article, it talks about allegations that students have made regarding the college football team having a culture of sexual assault, harassment, and retaliation. It also talks about the Office of Civil Rights inquiry into the school regarding concerns. And this is an ongoing story that's still being worked on in terms of what's going on at the college. For more information, you certainly can go to the link to read the entire article. But this is something that is of concern in particular. Oftentimes, when you've got athletics in a college, sometimes there's a concern that there becomes more a culture of this type of thing. Not always just athletics, but that is one concern, and when this type of thing may happen. Again, it's an ongoing matter at the University of Minnesota. Another one that I wanted to share is even more recent than that, and it includes the private college St. Olaf, which is in Northfield, Minnesota, where we have currently actively students who are quite upset about the college's sexual assault policy. In particular, this article talks about allegations of recent sexual assaults that have been reported by a couple of students, as well as the aftermath or the outcome of those particular matters and the concern about the college not applying their policy properly. It has prompted multiple protests, and in fact, you may not be able to see the words on the shirts that the students are wearing there, but in full it says, "Ask me how my college is protecting rapists." And so there is, in fact, a website that that group has actually created regarding that as well. And if you click on the link for the story, you'll be able to link to the web page that I referenced. One thing that's notable here is that in reading the web page as well as the updated article regarding this particular matter that came about a week later, it is clear that there seems to be some sort of a concern that hasn't just come to service at that particular college, but it's perhaps just now being talked about very um, openly. When you go to the website, one of the things that you'll see are support from alumni who may have experienced something similar or have observed something similar or have problems where something similar may have been reported at the college. And some of these people were there many, many years ago. There's also a very compelling discussion by a former faculty member who previously served on the committee that dealt with modifying their policy and ensuring that it provided the protection that it needed to have. This particular faculty member was very concerned about the culture of the college and expressed that in this particular letter as well. So some of those things are quite worth reading and can shed some light on some concerns that we have going on in some of our colleges right now. Even though we're in the middle of making a lot of modifications, um, there's still a lot of concern, and in many respects, many colleges and students in those colleges feeling like um, there needs to be a change in terms of how things are done, and not just students, but also in many times faculty, staff, administrators, and even former individuals who were part of the community of those particular institutions of higher education. And one more recent Minnesota headline regarding sexual assault or sexual violence in higher education. This one regarding a St. Thomas University matter. Again, this was a very recent article that was published in the Star Tribune. And this particular article is regarding the student who was accused of committing sexual assault or something that fell under the college's sexual violence policy, and that he received a long-term suspension through the fall of 2017, and meaning he can't return to the college until the spring 2018. And this was as a result of the investigation that took place involving sexual violence on the college campus. The student following the receipt of the outcome, has filed a federal lawsuit against the college, and he is alleging that the college has a process that is not really very fair to the person who is the accused, and stating that he believes, in fact, it is set up with a predetermined outcome that if you are accused, essentially you will be um, found to have committed this. And I don't know all the particulars of how things operate at St. Thomas, but I know for my college that's not the way that things operate. So there is no predetermined expectation that this person is going to be found liable or found to have violated the policy. Of course, I'm sure there's more to come. This is literally a very new. This article is from May of 2016.
Talked at some point in very minor discussions about Title IX and kind of the evolution of Title IX. We have the 2011 Dear Colleague letter that existed for federal requirements, and then 2014 we had some different changes that came about federally, and then in 2015 we had a number of changes that the state of Minnesota specifically put into place. Some of those requirements were specific to the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State Colleges and Universities system. It did not require the same things for private colleges and universities in Minnesota. However, that doesn't mean that those particular colleges or universities have not chosen to make changes since then. Additionally, the Office of Higher Education within that requirement for Minnesota states, with Minnesota State Colleges and Universities and the University of Minnesota, requires an annual report regarding sexual violence statistics. And that's something that pretty much all institutions in the state of Minnesota have to participate in, including the private colleges and universities. I had the opportunity to serve on the statewide task force that developed the particular uh, document that is used or process that is used to actually submit that report on an annual basis.